One of my favorite TV shows is Bob's Burgers. And if you'd asked me when it came on the air if I'd ever say that, I would have said, no way, because it really looked like a loser of a concept to me when it was first announced. I mean, a cartoon show about a perpetually failing family owned business? Where's the comedy in that? Obviously, I was wrong. And I'm happy to have been because Bob's Burgers is still a consistently funny show today. If you've never watched it, the whole run is available on Hulu and Disney Plus. And if you want to get caught up, go ahead. I'll wait. But assuming you have at least some knowledge that it's an animated show about a dad named Bob Belcher, a mom named Linda, and their three kids, Tina, Jean, and Louise, the latter of whom wears a pink bunny-eared hat and has aspirations to be a supervillain one day, and that this family runs a failing burger restaurant in a town next to a boardwalk carnival on the East Coast, I think today's a great time to talk about something that really bugs me about Bob's Burgers. Why, after 16 seasons and a movie, is Bob still so bad at selling burgers? So today, we're going to talk about what's really involved in running a profitable family business and how all the Bob Belchers out there who are really making burgers for a living can ensure that they've got enough money to send their kids to college or, maybe to even cooking school if things go really well. I'm Sean in St. Louis, and this is the Marketing Gateway. So the premise of Bob's Burgers, the restaurant, not the show, is that Bob creates these really amazing burgers made from fresh ground beef and never frozen ingredients. His menu is pretty simple: a standard burger with or without cheese, french fries, salad, drinks, and a burger of the day with a jokey name and some unusual toppings or side items. For example, during the town's art crawl event, Bob offers a Poblano Picasso burger with poblano peppers on it. When Bob becomes infatuated with the town's minor league baseball team during a winning streak, he offers the Take Me Out to the Burger, which comes with peanuts and Cracker Jacks. Yuck. And when Bob's trying to impress a food critic called the Moody Foodie during what can only be described as a hostage situation, he offers the Girls Just Want to Have Fennel burger, which I'll let you figure out for yourself. That last example, by the way, should tell you something about Bob. He is not very good at taking criticism. In fact, Bob is generally described as being smelly, surly, unconcerned about his appearance, and resistant to change. He'll do anything for his family, but he also occasionally accuses them of ruining his hopes and dreams by being terrible employees in the family restaurant. His wife, Linda, is constantly preoccupied with a desire for adventure and drama and musical theater. His son, Gene, is an aspiring self-taught musician with an unusual idea of what entertainment actually is. His youngest daughter, Louise, is constantly conniving how she can make money off of suckers since she's resentful of being poor. And his older daughter, Tina, is very responsible and eager to please, but clumsy and also easily distracted by her teenage hormones, which often cause her to be boy crazy or to mope around a lot. This sounds like a family that really shouldn't be in business, and honestly, it's amazing that they're able to make any money. Sometimes Bob or Linda have to work alone to handle the lunch rush and the dinner rush, which often seem to just be a handful of customers. Bob is also constantly forced to close his restaurant to either do things for his family or due to disasters that are caused by his family. Bob's regulars, particularly the handyman named Teddy, also can create situations that wind up scaring other patrons out of the restaurant. And then there's the fact that right across the street, a savvy businessman named Jimmy Pesto runs a pizzeria that serves terrible food, but which is so popular it's always full and even has a gift shop. Clearly, foot traffic isn't Bob's problem, and Jimmy regularly points out to Bob that he charges too little for his food, uses too high of quality of ingredients, and doesn't have a head for business, which is, more or less, correct. Whenever Bob starts to actually be successful, it's often because he's doing what someone else recommends to him, and he always winds up going back to the status quo because it's what he's comfortable doing. Okay, so I know this is a cartoon sitcom, and the writers have contrived all of this, so we can feel empathy for the characters and also laugh at the way their bad decisions lead to comedic situations. But let's put all that aside for a moment, because there is truth in satire, and when I go off the beaten path and try restaurants that aren't very busy, I often find that, they're pretty much being run like Bob's Burgers is. Their pricing is insensible. Their menus are either too simple or too complicated. Their food reflects an idea of what they think people should want instead of being matched to the customer's actual wants and needs. And they develop friendships with their regulars and don't really know how to provide good service to their new or occasional customers. And they have to put up with suboptimal employees because they can't afford to pay the good ones. So, back in episode 89 of the Marketing Gateway, I talked about why restaurants fail and shared the statistic from the National Restaurant Association that 30% of restaurants fail within 1 year and 60% fail within 3 years. That's more or less held true over time, though of course the rate is higher during recessions or when food prices are going up. But Bob's Burgers and these other restaurants like it aren't failed concepts. They exist and they hobble along, barely making it until one day the owners decide to shut it down and close up shop. We can presume that they've covered a lot of their fixed costs like restaurant equipment, tables, chairs, and fixtures, and they're basically just trying to cover their variable costs, maintenance costs, rent, and overhead, which is actually still a pretty good chunk of change. Bob's Burgers, according to the menu on the wall that's featured regularly in the show, charges $5 for a burger, add 50 cents for cheese. This special is $5.95. Fries are $2. A side salad is $2.50. A soft drink is $2, and beer is $4. Bob also seems to serve coffee and sometimes experiments with soft serve ice cream and cappuccino. The coffee can't cost too much since it's the old diner style stuff that sits on a burner all day, and the menu board doesn't say how much the ice cream is, but Bob rarely seems to sell it anyway, and he's annoyed by the customers asking for it. And the cappuccino machine winds up at a pawn shop thanks to Bob's wife needing money, and it's never seen again. So let's assume that the average customer spends about $10 on a burger and fries and drink. According to the same data I cited earlier, the average restaurant should take in around $600,000 a year in revenue, or about $1,700 a day, assuming they close on major holidays. That means Bob needs to serve 170 customers a day to hit that goal, which seems to be many multiples of the number of customers we see patronizing his restaurant during the show. And $600,000 is a lot, right? So why is his family complaining all the time about how poor they are? Well, the average net margin for a full-service restaurant is in the neighborhood of 3 to 5%, which is the amount of profit you make on top of all your costs. For Bob, that'd be somewhere from $18,000 to $30,000 if he's pulling in $600,000 a year worth of burger sales. But since Bob isn't paying any employees and is instead just hiring his family, he really ought to be able to keep about 25 to 35% of that revenue in labor savings, which would give him a six-figure salary. But Bob's clearly not pulling in that sort of revenue. He instead seems to be living right around the poverty line of around $39,000 for a family of 5, which means Bob is probably pulling in closer to $150,000 to $200,000 a year in burger sales, or about $400 to $500 a day, or 40 to 50 customers. And that seems more like it. So Bob has several strategies to make more money. Some of these he's not going to consider, like Jimmy Pesto's suggestion of using cheaper or frozen ingredients. But there are 3 things he really ought to try because all of them will help to make him more successful. The first is to raise prices. And this is honestly the most sensible suggestion. $5 for a burger was cheap even when the show first aired in 2011. When the Bob's Burgers movie came out in 2022, the Alamo Drafthouse ran a special promotion where they charged $17.50 for a specialty burger and $13 for loaded fries. That's probably a bit high for a local restaurant, but Bob should definitely get his prices up into the double digits given the price of beef today. I'd say maybe $10 for a regular burger, $12 for the special, and maybe $3 to $4 for fries and $3 for a soda. That would probably bring his average ticket price closer to $17 to $20 per customer, which would boost his income significantly. And since the show is constantly reminding us that Bob makes these incredible burgers people really love once they try them, that seems like a fair price. Even so, raising prices lowers demand, and Bob needs more customers to offset that effect. But therein lies the second problem. Bob does a really lousy job of getting the word out. He relies on his kids to do his marketing, mostly by making his kids dress up in a burger suit and hand out flyers that they lose or dump in the trash. And the kids also go online in one episode with social media posts that make him look bad. And Bob is really bad at leveraging his earned media from news coverage. He also barely participates in community events or even shows hostility towards them, but he also tries to run events in his own restaurant and doesn't require people to buy food or pay a cover. He also regularly makes mistakes like buying ads that do nothing for his business, adding to his costs by buying up extra seating he can't fill, or running a food truck that doesn't break even, but which does break down a lot. Bob's problem as a businessman is that he knows what success is supposed to look like, but he doesn't have any knowledge or understanding about what actually works. Sending one of his kids to college to actually learn how to market a business is potentially a good long-term strategy, but in the meantime, he really ought to consider a real marketing strategy like partnerships with the local amusement park, which is owned by his landlord, or using a social media and digital advertising campaign to draw in tourists who are likely to consider his restaurant a local treasure and post reviews online. And that makes a lot of sense for a restaurant like Bob's. After all, the locals don't seem too impressed by it, but the foodies generally love it. Well, maybe not the moody foodie, at least not at first, but he does eventually come around to enjoying one of Bob's burgers. The third thing Bob could do is try to grow sales among his own customer base by offering additional products. This advice is actually given to him in the show several times, like offering more imaginative appetizers or having products like tea on hand. Bob also has a recipe for a special burger he calls the Meat Saya, which is a beef tartare inside a burger medium well, inside a beef Wellington, but he only makes it once in the show as a giveaway item rather than selling it to his customers. Remember how I mentioned the Alamo Draft House was offering loaded fries? Bob could do that too. He could also make chili with some of his leftover beef or offer other products like hot dogs, onion rings, or milkshakes. Bob could also consider bundling his burgers with meal deals that include a side and drink for $15, and then push add-ons like cheese, specialty toppings, ice cream, or salad to get his average ticket price up. Speaking of specialty burgers, Bob could do a burger of the week instead of a burger of the day, so he has more time to build buzz about his fun ideas and also has more time to develop them and ensure that they're his best efforts. He'd also be able to bulk buy special ingredients to keep his food costs down. He could use the weekly change in menu to promote his business on social media to his existing customers and even give a discount on his special burgers on his slowest days, and that's often Monday or Tuesday for many restaurants, to get more people to come in and try them on a regular basis as a habit or a ritual. And there are, of course, many other things Bob could do that we see other restaurants do in the show, like offering order and delivery service or providing ambiance with music or a theme, or even using his alcohol seller's license to offer a better drink menu. But the most important thing Bob could do, actually focus on his customers. You see, in the show, Bob seems to take a dim view of his customers, and he's overwhelmed by being too busy, by having to take orders, or by having to interact with them, so he delegates most of those tasks to his wife and kids. But the place is called Bob's Burgers. People expect to meet Bob when they walk in, and if Bob is a surly, smelly, sarcastic cook who doesn't know how to treat people well, never mind those low prices or great burgers, people are not going to stick around. And indeed, Bob's regulars are an annoying handyman and a mortician, not exactly the sort of buddies most new customers want to make. We so often think of marketing as being what happens on the outside of our business, but quite often what's happening inside is what actually holds us back. And the lack of service is what's holding Bob back too. And while he blames his family for that, he really ought to blame himself, because if he made the experience of eating at Bob's Burgers less about his own needs and more about his customers, he would be as packed as Jimmy Pesto's across the street. Well, I'm Sean in St. Louis, and this has been the Marketing Gateway. We'll see you next time. So here's a reminder. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. According to Mental Health America, nearly 1 in 5 American adults will have a diagnosable mental health condition in any given year, and 46% of Americans will meet the criteria for a diagnosable mental health condition at some point in their life. Half of those people will develop conditions by the age of 14. Mental health is something we all should take seriously. Please do not be afraid to seek help. You're not alone in your struggles, and if you know someone who's struggling with mental health conditions, please help in any way that you can. Sometimes all it takes is a simple text checking in on them, and it could end up saving their life. If you find yourself needing immediate help, please text or call the Suicide and Crisis Hotline at 988. And if you would like to learn more or you need assistance in finding help, you can visit Mental Health America's website at mhanational.org. There's also an option on the page to donate if you feel so inclined, and I hope that you will.